Hi guys, I'm Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist, nomadcapitalist.com, and in this video I want to give you an overview and the pros and cons of the St. Lucia Citizenship Bond Investment Program. We've put together 5 different videos on each of the 5 Caribbean CBI programs, so you're definitely going to want to subscribe here on YouTube, watch all the videos, see some of the differences, see the opinions of someone who's actually gone through some of these programs, which is myself. And we have lots of other videos on second passports and economic citizenship, as well as other ways to get passports here on the channel and on nomadcapitalist.com. So St. Lucia is a program that I have a little bit of experience with myself. I found the folks to be pleasant. Everybody at these Caribbean programs is a bit on island time. And so it's kind of like when you build a house or when you renovate a house, which I've build houses, my family did when I was growing up, and now I've renovated numerous houses. Funny how these guys can never, in all their years of experience, give you an accurate quote for how long it takes to renovate your house. The same is somewhat true for these CBI programs. What St. Lucia actually said, interestingly enough, when they revised some of their numbers downward and came out with new options a while back, was that they were going to reduce the bureaucracy. And they did. Do understand with these programs there is a certain amount of bureaucracy, more than, let's say, a second residence or a fast-track naturalization program, because they are instant citizenship programs. But let's go over the different options. St. Lucia has 4 options, which I believe is more than any other CBI program out there. 4 different ways to get your passport, and I want to talk about what you get. So the most common route that people take, and we've got a video explaining why I think this makes sense, is the donation. And out of the 5 countries, St. Lucia is tied for having the lowest donation. It's $100,000 for a single person. Where they're not as cheap compared to some of the other programs is if you're a couple, it's $165,000, and then with a family it goes up a little bit from there. So if you're single, which I was during my process, then it's tied for the cheapest, and I think you get a little bit more bang for your buck over Dominica in terms of travel. We'll talk about that in a moment. So if you're a couple, then maybe watch the Antigua video. There's also a real estate option, and as far as I know, I don't see any projects in St. Lucia yet. What they've said is $300,000 real estate investment, plus a fee that I also don't believe has been set yet. So the real estate option was one that is coming along. Like Dominica, I think it's going to take a while to get it set up. They don't have the length of time that programs like St. Kitts and Nevis have had to establish their real estate programs, but that's one that we're going to watch out for. I also think there's a small chance that they're actually going to lower the real estate investment because they are on the lower end of the donation scale. They're $100,000 more expensive on the real estate side. $100,000 more than 2 different programs now, so we may see them reduce that. What's interesting about St. Lucia is they have 2 other options. One is you can put $500,000 in zero coupon government bonds for 5 years. That goes up to $535,000 if you're a couple. So $500,000 in bonds, you make no interest, you get your money back in 5 years. If you're a bond investor and you like St. Lucia's bonds, I mean, quite frankly, to put some money in zero coupon bonds seems like you have potentially a better chance of actually getting your full principal back than doing many of these real estate options, if you do get the principal back. The other option that is interesting is you can put a 7-figure amount into some kind of approved business project. If you do either of these more exotic options, there's a $50,000 fee. So as always, you don't just get to invest your money and walk away. The Caribbean programs don't allow that. There are actually other CBI programs that do allow you to pay very little government fees on top of actual investments, but that's another story. So $50,000 on top of the investments. I would imagine that for real estate, you're probably going to be in the same realm, and then for the donation, it's $100,000. So you've got options that other countries don't have. St. Lucia has adapted to market conditions as competition has gone up. We've talked in a separate video about the price war in the Caribbean CBIs. One of the things that they also dropped a while back was the net worth requirement. So it was actually relatively prohibitive to a lot of folks up until not that long ago. because the investment was higher, even though it wasn't government bonds and theoretically was not a bad deal. You were going to get your money, your capital returned. It was just a higher end program, and now they've, in my opinion, kind of changed course. So those are the options. I actually think that if you're looking for just the pride of having a passport from a nice country, I think that St. Lucia actually has some of the best beaches. I mean, I think that perhaps rivaling the Caymans in some parts. For me, it's a bit of a higher end vibe in the island. That's just kind of my perception. I have not been to all the islands. Dominica, for example, same price point on the donation, doesn't have as many beaches. So I think St. Lucia, you can kind of see it, back there. Very interesting country. Lots of interesting stuff going on. In terms of visa-free travel, it is a typical Caribbean CBI. You don't have Russia or China that you would get with some of the slightly more expensive programs. You don't have South Africa that you get with Antigua. There's really nothing that stands out about it, but it's a good, reliable visa-free travel document. You get the UK and Ireland, you get the Schengen area, you get Montenegro, and then you get most of South America. You do not get Brazil, but you do get all of Central America except for Mexico. And so if you consider that Central America. So, fortunately for me, I have Brazil covered somewhere else. Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, I believe are the ones excluded with St. Lucia. If those are important to you, then you'll either have to get a residence permit, which in Brazil I would say good luck. In Uruguay, maybe a bit easier. Paraguay have limits to pretty much everybody. But if you want to live in the Spanish-speaking Americas and you want the lowest price point, not a bad travel document. You get your Singapore, your Hong Kong, your Philippines. So you've got a nice corridor between Southeast Asia, Europe, most of Europe, and then most of the Americas. The big distinction if you're price shopping for me is there are a couple countries that Dominica has. I believe Dominica has Brazil, but in general you get more countries with St. Lucia, and especially if you're in the Americas. I mean, for me, I look at those Central American countries, which can be tough with a lot of other T or B passports. I actually have yet to cross one or two of them off my list, so I like the idea of that. Dominica doesn't have the ones that I haven't been to yet. So minor details. The other thing that's interesting about St. Lucia that some could argue is that Dominica has been around longer and therefore it's attracted more scrutiny. There was a 60 Minutes piece on Dominica. I think it's unfair. I think that people don't understand how these programs work. I think that the average person is never going to understand why someone would invest $100,000 in a passport, let alone people that our audience deals with. I mean, the Americans, the Australians, the Canadians, the Western people who already have good passports. So the perception goes. So I wouldn't really be too concerned about what people think. The question is there any issue with a passport that has a long history when you go to a border? And I'm not convinced that there is, but if the idea of having a newer passport from a little bit sexier island that has had less time to attract scrutiny, if that's of interest to you, then St. Lucia may be the right fit for you. And I happen to think that it is a great country. If you're a U.S. citizen, I think that you might be well off to pair it with something else. But it's definitely a program to consider. If you're looking for help figuring out which passport to get or which passport portfolio to create, and then what you do with the passport after you have it, we do offer help at nomadcapitalist.com. We also have lots of articles on nomadcapitalist.com on how passports and second passports work. And we also have lots of videos here on YouTube about not only these investment programs, if you want to get a passport in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, but second passports in general. So whether you want something that's a bit more affordable, a bit slower, you'd rather not make a donation or rather not invest $500,000, you want something cheaper, we have videos that cover that. So definitely subscribe and definitely go to nomadcapitalist.com. Thank you for watching.